Welcome to the Talking Free podcast. As the girl who has always been told she talks too much, can speak with a mouthful of marbles underwater, and can sell ice to Eskimos, I have found the perfect platform to have my say, freely. I am here to share with real people, having raw conversations about authentic stories. It is a place where you can feel safe discussing anything and everything. These stories will make you laugh, cry, debate, wonder, intrigue, and get curious about life as you talk free with Trudy Marie. Please note that the following podcast may contain discussions or topics that could be triggering or distressing for some listeners. I aim to provide informative and supportive content, but understand that certain themes may evoke strong emotions or memories. If you find yourself feeling overwhelmed or in need of support while listening, I encourage you to pause the podcast and take a break. Remember that it is okay to prioritise your well-being and seek assistance from trained professionals. There is no shame in this. In fact, it is the first brave step to healing. If you require immediate support, please consider reaching out to Lifeline on 13 11 14 or a crisis intervention service in your area. Thank you for listening, and please take care of yourself as you engage with the content of this podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Talking Free podcast. Today's episode is a solo edition of me as I tell my story about the time I married my dance teacher. Now, before you get up in arms over an authoritative male with a child, that wasn't the case. We were both adults and I was over 18. But my story begins at the end of high school, around the time I turned 18, and I wanted to become a debutante. My mother had been a debutante, and I loved the stories, I loved the tradition behind it, I loved seeing her photos, and as the oldest daughter, I really wanted that opportunity for myself. At the time, I was dating a guy who was involved with the Air Force cadets, and they were hosting a debutante ball, and I had the opportunity to join them. So, of course, I said yes, and we started preparation for that ball, which involved starting ballroom dance lessons at a studio in Perth. And that came about because one of the cadets was actually a ballroom dancer as well, and she would attend that studio. So that's why we ended up at that particular studio. So in 1994, I made my debut. I was a debutante with a beautiful bridal gown that was custom made for me. It was a formal event attended by my parents and my boyfriend. I was presented to the Air Commander at Government House in Perth, and it was a very, very special night and probably one of the most special nights of my life. After my debut, I wanted to keep dancing. I'd seen Peter Roby and Jason Gilkison as a child dancing at Garden City Shopping Centre, and it was always a dream to be able to dance like them. Well, maybe not as good as them because they're super special. So I started classes continuing at the same dance studio, just doing beginner and intermediate classes to learn more dances. And there was a young instructor who would help out at these particular classes, and the owners of the studio approached me and asked if I would partner him in competitive dancing. Now, of course, I jumped at that opportunity as this was my chance to be like Peter and Jason. And we kind of explored it in a couple of early sessions of just seeing how we would go together in a partnership. Unfortunately, though, he took an interest in me beyond dancing. He wanted a relationship, and I wasn't interested in him that way. I was happy to dance with him, but I'd just recently broken up with my boyfriend who I had been at the debutante ball with, and I was not interested in him in that way. And it became super awkward, almost to the point where I felt like he was stalking me at my home, like driving past my house and checking up on what I was doing. And it made me feel super uncomfortable, even to the point where I no longer wanted to attend the classes or the social classes at the studio. So the option for me to keep dancing was one, change studio, or 2, look at private lessons. Now, I had also become interested in the more technical side of dancing, which is where you start to do exams and you go through the bronze, silver, and gold medals before you go on to your stars, which is where you learn each individual dance at a higher level. And that really interested me. So I opted to stay at the same dance studio and look to private lessons. So I approached the owner of the studio to see what my options were. Now, he was, I'm going to say, in his late 50s. He appeared old to me as a young, 19, 20-year-old. And there was another professional in his late 20s, early 30s, so I thought. So obviously, as that young girl, I opted to go with the younger professional and started learning the different dances ready for exams. As we progressed through those medals, I started to have an hour lesson with the male, but then I also had half an hour lesson with his wife for technique to better my skills, because I was the perfectionist and I wanted the best grading on all of my exams, and I would not settle for second best. Now, as we became social and I was seeing them a couple of times a week, I was attending social dancing at the studio. I also started attending comps to, 1, just experience that competitive ballroom life, and 2, a little bit of me was secretly hoping that I could still find a partner to dance competitively, because it was something I really loved. And as I started spending more time at the studio, more time at these comps, I naturally started spending more time with this young professional couple and their little boy. I would babysit him, we would go out together. After comps, I would stay at their house. And in 1996, when I turned 21, they attended my birthday party. I really didn't go out clubbing too much unless it involved dancing, and ballroom dancing had really become part of my life in my early 20s. Now, looking back, hindsight vision is 2020. I was super naive and had no idea what was going on behind the scenes, in the sense that the male professional had clearly started to take an interest in me. And at an event on New Year's Eve of 1997, we were at Cannington Greyhounds attending a New Year's event for the studio. There was a whole bunch of friends there. He broke up with his wife quite publicly at that event. Now, in the new year, he started teaching at a new studio. He was obviously no longer welcome at the old studio because those owners had sided with the wife. She had been there way longer than he had. And so he started in a new studio. Now, at the time, my sisters and I were both doing medal classes with him. So we naturally just followed him to this new studio. And late in February, for his 30th birthday, I kind of felt a little bit sorry for him, and given that my love language is gift giving and acts of service, I threw him a surprise 30th with people from the studio, friends and family that I'd met, and made it a really nice night for him. Now, through our lessons at the studio and as progressed through the higher medals, it required a little bit more training, and you were with them for longer, like you were doing multiple lessons per week. And so we naturally started hanging out more and then started dating. And as the girl who had never been popular in school, never had a boyfriend in school, I hadn't had a boyfriend since my partner who had led me to become a debutante, I was super flattered that this older guy was actually paying attention and interested in little old me. And I realize how naive that was looking back on it now, because I was the good girl. I was the debutante. In fact, I was still a virgin at 21. So I needed some kind of commitment from him, especially as a previously married man with a child. So we got engaged before we moved in together, and we'd only been dating around 6 months. Progressed through, we got married in 1999 and we moved to the country in 2000. Now, the devastating thing for me as a result of that was that we stopped dancing. Moving away from the city, we no longer had those opportunities to keep dancing. So we moved up to the goldfields for his work, and the only way I can continue any form of dancing was to teach at primary schools, to basically give them their graduation dance for their primary school school students. I think it was year 7 at the time, but it would be the equivalent of year 6s today. At the same time, his son was competitively ballroom dancing in Perth. So we would still go backwards and forwards to Perth on the occasion to see his son dance at events. And I'd had 2 children myself at the time, so he was now a big brother, and that was our relationship in those early days. In 2005, his son made it to the Worlds representing Australia as a result of a competition he had been to. And because of that, we needed to travel to Perth for fundraising. But being 6 hours away in Kalgoorlie and having 2 small children, it just wasn't feasible for us as a family to continue to travel back to Perth every couple of weeks to attend these fundraising events. So I made the choice to say to my husband, go on your own, you can stay with your parents and you can still be there to help the fundraising. Over time, I started to notice a subtle change, and it was actually on a return trip for work and not for dancing fundraising that I knew something was up. In fact, I even suspected that there was another woman involved. Just the way he dressed, the way he acted, the behavior, I just knew something was up. And so I confronted him. Now, while he didn't admit it at the time, it became very clear in the weeks after our split that he had literally left me for his son's dance partner's mother. And for me, I just had to sit back and laugh because I was like, this has come full circle. I'm not saying that he left his first wife for me, but clearly there was a pattern of behavior that had happened here. That in the early days, he had left his first wife and then ended up with me as his student, now his partner. And now he had left me for somebody else related to dancing. And I just sit back and go, wow, how could I have been so naive? However, I don't regret it for 1 minute. We were married for 7 years and we were together for 9. I have my 2 beautiful children as a result of that relationship, and for that, I wouldn't change it for the world. I also got their big brother, and I became a step parent before I became a parent. And even now, because my ex-husband and I have been split for longer than we were together, I don't have that close relationship with my stepson. But as my kid's brother, he will always be part of my life, even if in only some small way. And I've known him since he was 2. So looking back, my whole 20s, my early 20s was taken up in this world of ballroom dancing. My later 20s was taken up as a mother and a wife to my former dance teacher. And that's what shaped my life at the time. And it's what made me who I am today. Do I still love ballroom dancing? Hell yes. And if I ever had the opportunity again to dance, like even if it's just socially on a dance floor, you can bet that I'm there strutting my stuff on the dance floor because I love it. And even for a very, very short period of time, my son tried ballroom dancing and he was very, very good at it. Very natural ability, just like his brother and his father, but he decided not to continue it. It wasn't something that he was interested in pursuing long term. So I look back on those years very, very fondly because it got to allow me to fulfill my dream of becoming a debutante, fulfill a dream of, doing ballroom dancing just as I'd seen Peter and Jason do once upon a time. But it also fulfilled my dream of becoming a parent. And for that, it was totally worth it. Thank you for tuning in to the Talking Free podcast today. If you have an idea for a future episode or a story you'd like to share, then please message me, as I am always up for real, raw and authentic conversations. If you love what you are hearing, then please be sure to subscribe to hear all the latest episodes and spread the word to your family, friends and colleagues so they too can listen in. If you are sharing on social media, then please be sure to tag me at _Trudy _Marie_ so I can personally acknowledge you. I am always open to comment about how these episodes have resonated with you. It would also mean the world to me if you were to leave a 5-star review to ensure the Talking Free podcast is heard by more listeners around the world. And remember, lead with love as you live this one wild and precious life.